Let's ask this. This just happened this week. Facebook, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, right? They all banned the InfoWars channel. So let me ask you, do you think that's a good thing or that's a bad thing?
No, I think it's a catastrophe.
Okay. So what's your solution? Do you believe Facebook or YouTube should be forced to provide a platform for speech that they detest?
No, I don't think they should be forced. I think that they've bit off far more than they'll be able to chew.
How so?
Because now they've decided that they're ethically responsible for the content on their platforms. So good luck with that decision, because they have an awful lot of content, and drawing the lines is going to be extraordinarily difficult thing to do. So basically, the way that these companies were set up to begin with is that people could post content and then other people could watch it and basically decide by their viewing. They could value the content by their proclivity to view. And now they've decided, as a consequence of this decision, that they're going to be in the business of arbitrarily determining what should and shouldn't be presented for public viewing. And they'll never run out of decisions to make. You know, lots of people who were watching Alex Jones didn't agree with him. They were just keeping an eye on him. So, like, I watched Alex Jones from time to time because I wanted to see what the radical conspiratorial right wing was up to.
Right.
And now that's not possible. Now they're driven underground.
Way to cover your tracks with your browser history. I appreciate it. Let me ask you this.
There's going to be all sorts of lines that they have to decide now. So they're going to take out Paul Joseph Watson next? Lawrence Southern? I mean, where are they going to draw the line exactly?
Okay, so if it's against their terms of service, isn't it within their domain to revoke the channel? What's the solution?
Of course it is. I didn't say they couldn't do it. I said it was a bad idea.
Okay, so you're not.
That's not the same thing.
Okay, so you don't have a. So,
I think it's.
Go ahead.
Well, I think that I really do believe, and I'm sad about this. I do believe that they've bitten off more than they can chew, and that it's going to be, it's one small. It's a warning sign with regards to these media conglomerates that are attempting to produce large-scale public discourse, because now they've taken the role of censor onto themselves, and they'll find that that's a never-ending role that produces endless trouble. They've got themselves into endless trouble, as far as I'm concerned. And from a perspective of a clinical psychologist, I would also say the worst thing you can do to someone who's paranoid, the most ill-advised thing you can do to someone who's paranoid, is persecute them. Yeah. So now that, I mean, Alex Jones is always talking about, the little I know about him, he's always talking about conspiracies of one form or another. And now what has all the appearance of a conspiracy between 4 or 5 very large media conglomerates is aimed squarely at him. So all the people who are watching him, who are conspiracy-minded and somewhat paranoid, are going to think, well, Jones must be onto something, because otherwise these big conglomerates wouldn't have clamped down on him. No. It's a very, very bad idea, and millions of people watch him. So
these are people who thought that Podesta had an underage sex ring in a pizza parlor. So I don't really think that this is necessarily the straw that broke the camel's back. It sounds to me. So I want to make sure that I clarify. Are you not amongst the people who believe that these big platforms like YouTube, Facebook should be treated like public utilities? Because there are a lot of right wingers who do believe that, like phone.
Yeah, I think they should be treated as public utilities, because otherwise they can't exist. Because there's no possible way that these corporations can handle monitoring their content. There's too much content. So they'll run out of manpower to make the decisions. I mean, okay, so Alex Jones is now being banned. What do you think about people who've interviewed Alex Jones? Should they be banned? That would include Joe Rogan, for example, because he interviewed Alex Jones. Yeah. So should we ban him? Well, and if not, why not?
So you think that Facebook, YouTube, Google, these companies that, basically start up in garages, these tech startups, invest millions of dollars and they grow to become successful, and then you support the government stepping in an authoritarian fashion and telling them who they have to allow on their platforms?
I didn't say the government should step in. I said that they made a mistake by deciding to act as censors, and that they'll pay for it. I didn't say anything about anybody stepping in and changing it. I said it was a mistake.
Well, if they're to be treated like public utilities, then that would be the government stepping in and because right now they're not.
Well, if they were to be treated as public utilities, that would be a transformation in the way they were regulated. So that really doesn't have anything to do specifically with the Alex Jones issue.
Well, I'm just saying you would support it. You would support it.
Okay. And let's reverse the question, because I'm the one having to come up with all the complex answers. All right. Okay. So how would you propose that these complex corporations decide which content is acceptable? Exactly.
No.
How would you propose that?
Exactly how I would propose it. I don't think there does
Yeah.
need to be a proposal. I mean, I think this is where actually I would be on your side. Let the free market decide, and the free market is YouTube and Facebook. And if they don't want to host content, I don't think they should be forced to host content. I don't think they should be compelled to host content.
Well, obviously they shouldn't be. That's not the issue. The issue is how are they going to go about making the decisions, and how are we going to be sure that that won't go dreadfully wrong? I mean, obviously it's the case that censorship can go wrong. You certainly see that in places like China. Once you start with censorship, how do you have any idea how are you going to put proper boundaries around it and decide who's acceptable? You're either going to let your listeners decide that, or you're going to decide it. And then you're going to find out that you've taken on a huge weight of decision making that you can't handle. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that won't happen. But it's certainly, I would be very loath to decide what needs to be censored, because the number of decisions I'd have to make would multiply beyond end.
Well, I'm not saying let any specific individual decide. I'm saying let the free market decide. If people don't want Alex Jones on YouTube, then YouTube doesn't have to provide it. If people watching YouTube don't.
I already agreed that YouTube doesn't have to provide it. I said it was a mistake to engage in censorship.
Sure.
Just because people are allowed to do something doesn't mean it isn't a mistake upon occasion. So I'm not asking for government regulation. And the idea that transforming these corporations into something approximating utilities would be a form of regulation is really and what would you say? It's an ill-formed way of posing the question. It's a matter of classification. Do you think that Alex Jones should be able to use a phone?
I do think Alex Jones should be able to use a phone as long as he pays for it, as long as a phone company wants to offer him their services.
Right, so the phone company offers everyone equal access to the services regardless of content. And I presume you'd object if the phone service started to decide that conversations shouldn't be allowed to occur. And so you can make a reasonable argument that these large-scale media distribution companies play the same role, but on a larger scale. It's not necessarily the case that it's an argument without flaw, but it's a reasonable argument. But I don't think that there's any real alternative. I don't see how companies like Facebook and YouTube can possibly police their content without producing far more trouble than they'll save. That's the issue.
Well, I'm not so much just concerned about them policing the content. What I'm concerned with is, let's say we do the public utility sort of option, right? What I'm concerned with is the free market will be able to provide alternatives. You know, Alex Jones can go there. If we're consistent, and we believe in freedom of speech and the freedom of market as it applies thereof, we should be free to accept. We should follow this down the logical trail that there will be an alternative platform for Alex Jones or you.
Yes, there probably will be. And that's also why I think it was a mistake for these companies to engage in the censorship, because I think that they're signing their own death warrant by doing so. It'll probably take 10 years to unfold, but it's a big mistake. And so that is what will happen, is because people will stop trusting YouTube and Facebook and so forth to provide uncensored access to content. And as a consequence, other forms of information distribution will emerge. So that's why I thought it was a bad decision from a corporate perspective.
Okay.
They had every right to make it, but I think it's a bad decision.
If I were to walk into your house, okay? If I were to walk into your house right now and harass you and call you all sorts of names and get right up in your face and not leave after you've asked me to leave and continue harassing you without any refuge for you, would you think that is a crime for me to do that?
I don't know why you're asking the question. So
well, let me tell you why I'm asking. So now, again, this is why we talk about the Constitution in guns. Now we have fully automatic AR-15s and things change, right? Times change. We need to adapt, and we've both agreed on that to some extent. Now, online, people like Alex Jones, they have the ability to invade your house digitally, continually, and harass and berate.
You can always shut it off.
Not necessarily. That's the thing. You can't. You can't shut off everything. You can't block people. You can't mute people on every platform. Then they can have your email on YouTube. You know, it shows up in your suggested feed. The point is, especially...
No, that's a silly argument. You can just shut the whole thing off if you want. So it's a silly argument. It's not like someone invading your house. So because you can shut it off at any time.
Okay.
So no, that's just not going anywhere, that argument.
Well, what if someone has a computer in their house then? If they have a computer in their house, then it means that someone can invade their house that way digitally. There's no way to find a space away from these, particularly people like Alex Jones, most egregious offenders, right, who spread conspiracies and effectively lead to doxing of people. I mean, that's just...
Well, a lot of this, the thing is too, it's again, the question is more fundamental. Let's assume that it's a bad idea for poorly supported conspiracy theories to be formulated and distributed.
Yeah, let's assume that.
yeah, fine. Well, we don't need to put it in air quotes. We could probably both assume it. The question is, what should you do with people who are doing that? And the one answer is, well, do what you can to silence them and drive them underground. The other is, let them talk and let people make up their own minds. And my sense is that people are wise enough to listen to people of that sort and decide that that's too extreme. Now, not everyone, because conspiracy theorists can find followers among people who are disagreeable and somewhat paranoid, but it's best for everyone, including the conspiracy theorists themselves, that those things are aired in public discussion, because it helps keep people sane. You know, like I've known people who are a little bit on this.
I disagree.
Yeah, but that's because you don't know what you're talking about.
No, I think you're incorrect. Listen, there are more Americans who believe in angels than in climate change. The top shows are the Kardashians. Look at what's on television. I don't believe that the American public, that anyone should be granted the same.
It's not the issue.
Yeah, it is. You said that they should be wise. They should treat them wise enough. I'm saying I don't think they're wise enough, and that's why
they're wise enough compared to the alternatives.
Okay.
You know, your system in the United States was never set up under the presumption that the people were wise. It was set up under the presumption that the people, regardless of their wisdom, had the right to self-determination. And even more importantly, that although the people themselves might not always be wise, there isn't a better source of authority than the people themselves. So that no matter how corrupt and foolish the people happen to be, whatever systems you put in place to supplant them will be worse. And so I think that, and you might not believe that, but and that's fine. But that is the founding principle of the American system.
I don't believe it.
Yeah, that's fine. You don't have to believe it.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that Alex Jones and anyone with a Facebook page is, for example, as qualified and as safe for the American public as Walter Cronkite or people in the Senate and House who are qualified to make these determinations. I don't. That's just a disagreement. But I'll let people, It's
not just a disagreement. It's actually a disagreement about the fundamental structure of the entire political system, because you think that it's possible to produce banks of experts of one sort or another who can supplant the fundamental will of the people. And I think that that's a very bad idea. And I think that history shows that that's a bad idea. At least with democracy, it tends to be self-correcting. So if people make egregious errors, they correct them in the next election.
Well, okay.
And so